There are moments in life that do not announce themselves. They arrive quietly in the middle of something completely ordinary. You are standing in a grocery store. The light is slightly cold. The air feels still. There is a low mechanical hum somewhere in the background. Nothing special. People are standing in line, not impatient, not calm, just waiting. There is a man in front of you. He is placing items on the counter, slowly. Not unusually slow, just slow enough to be noticed. At first, nothing happens. You are just standing, breathing, waiting. And then, almost imperceptibly, something begins. A thought appears. Why is this taking so long? It doesn't feel like a thought, it feels like a fact. Another thought follows. He could move faster. And then another. People are so unaware, and suddenly something shifts. The body tightens, a slight contraction in the chest, a subtle pressure in the jaw. The breath becomes a little shorter, and without realizing it, you are no longer standing in a store. You are inside a story about time, about other people, about how things should be, and the body reacts as if the story is real. But if you slow down, what is actually happening? There is a body standing. There are sounds. There is light. There is breathing. And then there are thoughts about all of it. And those thoughts begin to replace reality, not because they are more accurate, but because they never stop. And anything that never stops begins to feel like you. This is where the confusion begins. Later that day, you are walking outside. The air is colder now. Your body adjusts automatically. There is no particular focus, just movement, and then suddenly a memory appears, a conversation, something someone said. Not dramatic, but slightly uncomfortable, and immediately the body reacts. A tightening, a subtle drop in the stomach, a contraction in the chest, and the mind begins to replay. You reconstruct the moment, you replay the words, you edit your response, you say what you should have said, you defend yourself, you explain, you argue inside your head. The other person is not here. The situation is over. Nothing is happening. And yet the body behaves as if it is happening now. This is usually not noticed because attention is completely inside the replay. But if in that exact moment something becomes clear, this is a memory, not as a concept, but as a direct recognition. Something changes. The thoughts continue. The replay continues, but they become lighter, less solid, more transparent, like something you are seeing instead of something you are inside. And this is the first real shift. Not control, not stopping thought, but seeing thought as thought. There is something else that begins to reveal itself. It is always there, quiet, subtle, but constant. Control, a movement that tries to hold everything together, to predict, to secure, to prevent what might go wrong. You wake up in the morning. before opening your eyes, there is a moment, very short. Nothing has started yet. No story, no plan, no pressure. Just quiet. And then the mind begins. What do I need to do today? Will I have enough time? I need to organize everything. And within seconds, the body changes. The breath becomes shallow. The muscles activate. The system tightens. Nothing has happened. But internally, everything has begun. The mind moves into the future, and the body follows. And from that moment on, you are reacting, not to reality, but to projection. And this continues throughout the day, in small moments, in almost invisible ways, until it becomes normal. So normal that it is no longer seen. There is a particular kind of tension that appears when nothing is happening. It does not feel like stress at first. It feels like anticipation. You send a message, not very important, but not insignificant either. Something in between. You put your phone down. At first, nothing. A few seconds pass, your attention moves somewhere else. Then, without deciding, you check the screen. No reply. You put it down again. Another moment passes. You check again. Still nothing. And then something begins. A thought appears. Why haven't they answered? Another follows. Maybe I said something wrong. And then something changes in the body. The stomach tightens. The breath becomes slightly shorter. Attention narrows. And now you are no longer just waiting. You are inside a projection. The mind begins to build. It creates scenarios. They might be upset. They might be ignoring me. Something changed. Each thought adds a layer. Each layer adds tension, and the body responds as if the situation is real. But what is actually happening? A message was sent. There is no reply yet. That is all. Everything else is imagined, and yet the imagined feels more real than what is here. This is how the mind fills the unknown, and what it fills it with is almost always fear. Now, instead of following the thought, stay right here. Feel the body, not the story, the body. Where is the tension? In the chest, in the stomach, and in the throat? Find it and stay with it, without naming it, without trying to fix it, without trying to remove it. Just sensation. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, like something is wrong, like something needs to change. But stay. Do not move away. Do not distract. Do not replace it with another thought. Just feel, and slowly something begins to shift. The sensation is not fixed. It moves. It changes. It pulses. Sometimes it becomes stronger. Sometimes softer. Sometimes it spreads. Sometimes it dissolves. And this is important because it shows something very simple. It is not solid, it is not permanent, it is movement. And what keeps it in place is resistance, the attempt to make it stop, the attempt to control it. But when that attempt relaxes even slightly, the sensation begins to release. not because you forced it, but because nothing is holding it anymore. And in that, there is a different kind of space, not relief, not pleasure, something quieter, a softening, a reduction of pressure. And within that space, something becomes clear. The thought did not create the tension, it sustained it. Now return to the night. You are lying in bed. The room is quiet, the lights are off, there is nothing to do, nowhere to go. The body is still, and in that stillness, something begins to appear. The mind starts to move. A thought, then another, then a thread, a conversation from earlier, something you said, something you didn't say, something that could have been different, and almost immediately, the body reacts. A contraction in the chest, a tightness in the stomach, a slight tension in the throat, and the mind continues. It replays, it edits, it improves. You say what you should have said. You defend yourself, you explain, you justify. The other person is not here. The moment is gone, nothing is happening, and yet the body reacts as if it is happening now. This is how the system works. Thought generates a signal. The body responds. There is no distinction between past and present, and if this is not seen, the cycle continues. The night becomes restless, not because of reality, but because of thought. Now pause, do not stop the mind, do not fight the images, instead feel the body. Where is the tension? Stay there, without naming, without fixing, without moving away. And slowly, something changes. The sensation begins to move, it shifts, it breathes, it loosens, because it is no longer resisted. And in that, there is rest. Not because everything is resolved, but because nothing is being held. There is a state that is almost always avoided. Loneliness, not the absence of people, not being physically alone, but something more subtle, an internal emptiness, a quiet space where nothing is happening, no immediate thought, no clear direction, no distraction, and as soon as this appears, the mind reacts. It tries to fill it, the phone, music, scrolling, talking, anything, but staying here. Why? Because this space has no structure, no familiar identity, no clear sense of me. It feels unstable, uncertain, and that uncertainty feels uncomfortable, almost like something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong? What if this feeling is not a problem, but something that has never been fully experienced? Stay. Do not escape. Do not reach for anything. Just remain. At first, there is discomfort, a subtle pressure, a sense that something is missing. But stay, and slowly, something begins to change. The density softens, the discomfort becomes lighter, more open, less defined, and then, almost unexpectedly, space appears. Not empty in a negative sense, but open, wide, alive. And within that space, there is something else. Silence, not forced. not created, just there. And in that silence there is presence, subtle but undeniable, and in that moment something becomes clear. Loneliness was never the absence of something, it was the absence of distraction. If attention becomes more refined, something very subtle can be noticed. Between thoughts, there are gaps, very small, almost invisible. A thought appears, it moves, it disappears, and before the next one arrives, there is a moment, a gap. No commentary, no interpretation, no internal dialogue, just openness. Usually, this moment is missed because attention moves too quickly from one thought to the next. But if you do not follow the next thought, if you remain, this gap becomes visible, and in that gap there is no problem, no past, no future, no identity, no tension, only presence. And the more attention rests here, the more this becomes familiar, not as an experience to hold, but as a background. And thoughts begin to feel different. They are still there, they still appear, but they no longer define everything. They become movements within something larger, and that something does not move, does not react, does not change, and this is not something you create. It is something you stop covering. By constantly moving, by constantly thinking, by constantly becoming. And when that movement slows, even slightly, this becomes visible, always here, always present, always unnoticed, until now. At some point, another assumption begins to reveal itself. The idea that there is someone observing all of this, a center, a witness, a me who is aware. This can feel very real, very stable, almost like a position. I am the one who sees. But if you look carefully, where is this observer? Is it a thought? Then it appears and disappears. Is it a sensation? Then it changes. Is it located somewhere in the body? Then it can be found. And anything that can be found is something observed. So what is observing? Do not answer, just look directly, without thinking. And something unexpected happens. The observer cannot be located. There is seeing, but no seer. There is awareness, but no owner. There is experience, but no center, holding it together. And this is not confusing. It is simple, so simple that the mind cannot grasp it, because there is nothing to grasp. And in that moment, something relaxes deeply, because there is no longer a need to maintain a position, no need to be something, no need to hold an identity. There is just this happening, knowing itself without separation. There is one more movement that becomes visible. Control. Not control of the world, control of experience, a subtle effort to feel a certain way, to be calm, to be certain, to be safe. And anything that does not match that is resisted. Anxiety appears, and immediately there is a reaction. This should not be here. I need to fix this. I need to get rid of it. And this movement creates more tension than the anxiety itself, because now there is conflict, not just sensation, but resistance to sensation, and resistance locks the system. But what if, for a moment, you do not resist? Not because you accept, not because you agree, but because you do not interfere. You allow the sensation to be exactly as it is, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is intense, even if it is unclear, and you stay without moving away, without trying to change it, and something subtle happens. The tension is still there, but the conflict is gone. And without conflict, the system begins to open. The sensation moves, shifts, softens, or intensifies, and then releases, because it is no longer being held. And in that, control begins to dissolve, not as a decision, but as a natural result of seeing. At some point, very quietly, something begins to fall away. Not a thought, not an emotion, a movement. The movement of seeking. It has always been there. Sometimes obvious. I need to understand. I need to find something. I need to get somewhere. Sometimes subtle. What's next? Am I there yet? Is this it? Even in stillness, this movement can remain. A slight leaning forward, a sense that something is not complete. But if attention becomes still enough, this too can be seen, not as an idea, as a direct experience. Attention, a direction, a movement away from what is here, and in the moment it is fully seen, something unexpected happens. It stops, not because you stopped it, not because you decided, but because it is no longer hidden, and what is seen clearly cannot continue in the same way. The search ends. In the moment it is understood, and what remains is not something new. It is what was always here. There is a tendency to expect something special, a final state, a shift, a transformation, something that confirms this is it. But when the search ends, what remains is almost too simple. There is breathing, there is the body, there are sounds, there is space, and there is knowing. Not knowing as thought, knowing as presence, and the mind may ask, is this all? And the answer does not come as words, because the question itself comes from expectation, from the idea that something more should be here. But if that expectation is also seen, it dissolves, and what remains is completeness, not as a concept, as a fact. Nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be removed. This moment as it is already whole. There is no center to protect, no identity to maintain, no position to hold, only life, unfolding, and awareness without effort. There was never a distance, there was never a separation, only attention. moving through experience, and now resting. You were never away, there was only temporary confusion, and this is the end of that confusion, not as an achievement, not as a result, but as recognition, simple, immediate, silent, and in that silence there is peace. Not because something was gained, but because nothing is being resisted, nothing is being added, nothing is being held, just this as it is, and this is home.